Coming up on The World Today. U.S. President Donald Trump signals he is ready to leave the White House. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson defends tier allocations for COVID-19 rules in England. Plus, Emmanuel Macron said to be shocked at footage of 3 police officers beating up a black man in Paris. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Akaite Afia. Iran's most senior nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, has been assassinated near the capital, Tehran, the country's defense ministry has confirmed. Fakhrizadeh died in hospital after an attack in Absard in Damavand County. Iran's foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, has condemned the killing as an act of state terror. Western intelligence agencies view Fakhrizadeh as being behind Iran's secret nuclear weapons program. He was reportedly described as the father of the Iranian bomb by diplomats. News of the killing comes amid fresh concern about the increased amount of enriched uranium that Iran is producing. Enriched uranium is a vital component for both civil nuclear power generation and military nuclear weapons. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will leave the White House if Joe Biden is formally confirmed as the next president. Answering reporters' questions for the first time since losing the November 3rd vote, Mr. Trump insisted, however, that this race is far from over. He has refused to concede, citing unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud. Individual states are currently certifying their results after Mr. Biden was projected as the winner with an unassailable lead. Mr. Biden's leads Mr. Trump 306 votes to 232 under the Electoral College system that is used to pick presidents.
It's going to be a very hard thing to concede because we know there was massive fraud. So as to whether or not I can get this apparatus moving this quickly, because time isn't on our side, everything else is on our side, facts are on our side. This was a massive fraud. This should never take place in this country. We're like a third world country. We have machines that nobody knows what the hell they're looking at.
If the Electoral College does elect President-elect Joe Biden, are you not going to leave this building?
Just so you, certainly I will. Certainly I will. And you know that.
U.S. political analyst Curtis Adigba joins us now for more on this. Mr. Adigba, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, after several days of political wrangling, it seems reality is finally setting in for the president. However, he's still promising to continue his challenge. So, at this point, do you see any possibility of the president turning this around in his favor?
There's no way. It's increasingly it's becoming very, very difficult, and all the pathways have been shut. So I don't see him clawing his way back in any way possible. But of course, Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He's going to keep the show going for his base.
Joe Biden has announced some of his first picks for cabinet. Most of them are his old colleagues from the Obama administration. Some analysts have said it simply looks like a third term under the Obama administration. So what's your take on this?
Well, I don't think so. Just don't forget that Joe Biden was Obama's vice president for 8 years. And they share compatible ideas about what global politics and the U.S. politics should be like. And so he's gone back to what he knows very well. Look, let's look at some of the picks he has made. He picked Tony Blinken as Secretary of State designate. Blinken was his national security advisor when he was vice president. He picked Janet Yellen, who was the Fed chairman, as Treasury Secretary. He picked Jake Sullivan, who was the deputy national security advisor to Obama, as national security advisor. He picked Alejandro Mayorkas. Alejandro Mayorkas, by the way, is a Latino, and then who had the Homeland Security. He picked Avery Hines as chief of defense intelligence, and so these are people he knows very well, and that is telegraphing a clear message. We are going back to the old America, when America was the leader of the world. So I don't see that as a third term for Obama because the challenges are different now. We have a rampaging China that wasn't as strong as it is now, as they are now, when Obama was president. So Joe Biden has got to confront China, a China that is muscling all the global economic power and trying to upstage America. So you cannot say it's the same challenge. You also have North Korea. Kim Jong-un has formed a personal relationship with Trump. He knows that Trump practices a kind of foreign policy that is unstable and personal. Now, you have a Joe Biden who is coming back, an archetypal diplomat, a man who believes that there should be stability in the foreign practice of the United States. So Joe Biden is going to crawl his way back, trying to bring Kim Jong-un back to the table to discuss real, substantial foreign policy as opposed to the personal, transactional touch of Donald Trump. So it's not the same.
Well, as you've mentioned, U.S. relations with China and North Korea, with Biden taking a different approach from Trump's America First policy, what other changes in terms of foreign policy do you expect to see from Biden?
Well, under Donald Trump, what we had or what we still have was a transactional foreign policy. You like me, he likes me, he writes me love letters. He says he wants to do business with me. He says I've done things that no world leader or no American president has done before. And when the results were coming in and China, of course, held back, a lot of people said, China actually wanted Biden to win. That's not true. China, in fact, preferred Trump to Biden. China, of course, knows that Biden is good at foreign policy. Don't forget that for 38 years, he was chairman of the Foreign Service Committee of the United States Senate. So he knew all the world leaders name by name. He knew where the power stood. And so Biden is bringing some stability. Unlike Donald Trump, who deserted the world stage by his American first foreign policy, Biden is coming back, even by the team that he has picked. It is clear to the whole world that he's going back to America, the leader of the world. Biden is moving away from the idea that I alone can do it, to we all can do it together. That's why he said, when he announced his national security team, he simply said, America is back and we will not retreat from the world. America is coming back to lead the world. America is coming back to lay emphasis on dealing with its own allies, unlike America moving away from the entire world and saying, look, it is America first and the whole world can perish. So you can see the different direction Biden is heading to.
All right. Well, Mr. Adigba, thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
Moving away from the United States, Scottish leader Nicola Sturgeon says an independence referendum that could wrench apart the United Kingdom after Brexit should take place in the earlier part of the devolved Parliament's next term, which begins in 2021. If there was another referendum and if Scots voted out, it would mark the biggest shock to the United Kingdom since Irish independence a century ago, just as London grapples with the impact of Brexit. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said the 2014 independence referendum was decisive and a once-in-a-generation event, so should be respected. His government says there should not be another independence referendum in the near future.
I think the referendum, for a whole variety of reasons, should be in the earlier part of the next Parliament. I'm not going to sit here right now. I intend to say more about this before the election in our manifesto, but we are still in a global pandemic that I feel a bit more hopeful about seeing the end of than I did even just a couple of months ago, but there's still a lot of uncertainty ahead. And, I'm a lifelong believer in campaigner for, advocate for independence. But right now, I'm also the First Minister of Scotland, and my responsibility is to the health and the well-being of the country in trying to steer it through a pandemic, and I'm very focused on that. But as we come out of that pandemic, and this will be true of all countries, but there are particular aspects of this in Scotland's case, there are questions all of us have to ask. What kind of countries, societies do we want to be as we emerge from the pandemic?
UK UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he understands criticism of his plan to move nearly all of England into the highest COVID-19 tiers when a national lockdown ends next Wednesday. The Prime Minister says another approach would divide the country up into complicated subdivisions and clarity is needed. 20 million out of England, 55 million people will be placed in the top category of the government's three-tier system, which has seen its guidelines tightened since its use before the November lockdown. London will be placed in the high alert second toughest tier.
Well, you know, I perfectly understand why people are frustrated and why they don't want the measures that we're obliged to recommend and to institute. The difficulty is that we're coming out of the tough autumn measures, out of the lockdown on Wednesday, with the incidence of the disease still really pretty high. And, you know, it's about 1 in 80, 1 in 85 people in this country have it. And what we all need to do is use this tough tiering, which is, you know, as I was saying just now, it's more relaxed by a long way than the current lockdown measures, but use the tough tiering to drive the disease down, both in the Tier 3 and the Tier 2 areas, until the vaccine comes on stream, which it will, we hope, over the next weeks and months. And in the meantime, using that option of mass community testing to drive the virus down. That's what we want to do. And I totally understand why people feel frustrated. I get that. But I really, really hope that people also understand that I think the vast majority of the British public want us to work hard, do the right thing, and beat the virus together.
Well, let's take a look at some other developments now from around the world on our COVID-19 Global Update.
The number of infections in Germany during the coronavirus pandemic has passed 1 million, with 22,806 new cases in 24 hours and a record 426 deaths. Russia has also reported record figures today, with 27,543 daily cases and 496 deaths. Away from Europe, South Korea has reported more than 500 new coronavirus cases for the second consecutive day, a level not seen in nearly 9 months. As the third wave of infection spreads nationwide, South Korean residents have voiced concerns about hospital bed shortage and are calling on the government to enforce higher precautionary measures. Tokyo Governor Yuriko Koike says residents have to be ready for 1,000 daily cases as coronavirus infections in Tokyo hit a record daily 570 cases, topping the previous high of 539. In response to the recent spike in cases, restaurants and bars in Tokyo have been asked to shorten their business hours within 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. for 20 days, starting from Saturday. Also seeing a spike in cases, Hong Kong recorded 92 new COVID cases over the past 24 hours, the highest daily record since early November.
The number today is the highest since early November, and we are, of course, worried about the trend. You can imagine if one patient infected 2 relatives, the number will double. If they go out during the communal period for some social activities, for example, they have meals with 10 friends during the communal period, one patient may infect 10 other people. So the numbers can be escalating very fast.
The global financial hub has now recorded a total of 6,040 cases of infections and 108 deaths since late January. Over 300 recent cases have been linked to dance clubs. And finally, Thailand has signed a purchase agreement for AstraZeneca's potential COVID-19 vaccine. The announcement comes as other countries in the region, like the Philippines, prepare to sign similar deals with AstraZeneca and other firms to guarantee supplies. The Oxford University AstraZeneca team says the vaccine they are developing has been found to have between 70% to 90% efficacy.
Thanks for staying with us. President Emmanuel Macron is reportedly very shocked at footage of 3 police officers beating up a black music producer in Paris. According to reports, Mr. Macron has not publicly commented about the incident, but has discussed the issue and those involved with Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin. The 3 officers identified in the video beating Michel Zecler have been suspended and are under investigation. The incident on Saturday has led to fresh scrutiny of the security forces. Stars of the French World Cup football team are among a number of public figures who have spoken about their anger after the footage captured in the French capital was made public. The 3 officers are under investigation. Australia has told 13 Special Forces soldiers that they face dismissal in retaliation to a report on alleged unlawful killings in Afghanistan. Under mounting pressure, Lieutenant General Rick Burr, the head of the Australian Army, says 13 current soldiers have been issued with notices that could eventually lead to their termination. Lieutenant General Burr did not identify any of the 13 soldiers, but says they were not part of the 19 current and former soldiers who face possible criminal charges. He adds that the 13 soldiers that face dismissal have 2 weeks to respond to the notice.
At this time, 13 individuals have been issued administrative action notices in relation to the Afghanistan inquiry. At this point in time, no individuals have been separated from the Australian Defence Force. Administrative action includes receiving a notice proposing to terminate the individual's service. The individual then has the opportunity to respond within a minimum of 14 days. So much good work was done by so many people in Afghanistan, and that is absolutely not forgotten on me or anyone who has served there. We're all committed to making sure that that legacy is understood, is preserved, and we honour the sacrifice of so many, their commitment of so many over a sustained period of time. I acknowledge their service, the support of their families, through this process. I acknowledge the fallen and pay my respects absolutely to those families. We will not forget them, and we will honour their legacy.
The African Union envoy has met with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in the capital, Addis Ababa. The envoys include 3 former African heads of state. Earlier, Ethiopia's government has already rejected international efforts to negotiate a peaceful end to the fighting in the northern Tigray state. Since Thursday, Prime Minister Abiy ordered the military to launch what he described as a final offensive against leaders in Tigray. Meanwhile, the leadership in Ethiopia's Tigray region says it has appointed a representative to discuss with the African Union and other international bodies an immediate cessation of hostilities with the Ethiopian government. In a statement, it also called for unimpeded humanitarian access and an independent investigation into any alleged war crimes. The United Nations warns of possible war crimes if the Ethiopian army attacks Mekelle, also expressing concern about the lack of access to the region for humanitarian workers. Pig guts were thrown and scuffles broke out in Taiwan's parliament today over the easing of U.S. pork imports. The government has been criticized for a recent decision to allow pork containing ractopamine into the country. The addictive ractopamine is currently banned for pig use in Taiwan, as well as in China and the European Union, due to concerns about safety for animals and humans. While welcomed in Washington and removing a roadblock to a long sought-after U.S. free trade deal for Taiwan, the main opposition party, KMT, has strongly opposed the decision, tapping into public concern about food safety after several high-profile scandals in recent years. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, condemned the protest, saying in a statement, the throwing of pig guts was a waste of food that stank up the parliament floor and was disgusting, calling for a return to rational debate. Thousands of Indian farmers have scuffled with police as they tried to march to the capital, Delhi, in protest against new laws liberalizing procurement that they say will leave them vulnerable to big companies. Police fired tear gas at some places on the outskirts of Delhi and used water cannons at entry points to stop people from coming into the city center from the big farming state of Punjab. Under the laws enacted in September that Prime Minister Narendra Modi called a watershed for agriculture, farmers are free to sell their products anywhere, including to big corporate buyers, instead of at government-regulated wholesale markets where farmers are assured of a minimum procurement price. Many farmer organizations oppose the new law, saying it would leave small growers with little bargaining power. They also say they fear the government will eventually withdraw price support for wheat and rice. The government says there is no plan to eliminate the wholesale markets. A Cuban dissident group says police have raised its HQ in the capital, Havana, detaining members on hunger strike over the jailing of a rapper. The San Isidro movement says some people were beaten and social media was temporarily shut down to stop images of the raid being shared online. Rapper Denis Solis was sentenced after a row with a police officer. Cuban authorities claimed the raid was carried out over a health violation related to coronavirus. The San Isidro movement gained international attention recently. Founded in 2018, many of its members are artists, musicians, journalists, and academics who oppose what they call oppressive measures by Cuba's communist government. And finally on the program, Argentine football legend Diego Maradona has been laid to rest after a simple religious ceremony attended by family and close friends in the leafy surrounds of the Bella Vista Cemetery outside the capital. The peaceful ceremony was witnessed by 24 people as Maradona was buried next to the graves of his parents, Dalma and Diego. Fans waving Argentine flags had gathered along roads as Maradona's funeral car drove by under heavy security. Maradona, regarded as one of the greatest footballers of all time, died on Wednesday at the age of 60. Well, that is all for the program today. Thanks so much for staying with us. I'm Akaite Afia. Have a great weekend and stay safe.